Warning: some contents may be disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. I guess you could trace my current situation back to two factors: my New Year's resolution and my weakness to aggressive marketing. It started this Christmas that I returned home after a long time. It was nice to see my family after being abroad and constantly on the road working. Unfortunately, my employment makes me travel a lot. You see, I'm a public relations manager for a big company, and this forces me to be in all kinds of different places, just all over the world. Of course, I don't complain, and traveling is always a beautiful experience. But you can get homesick pretty easily. Now, having traveled pretty much everywhere this year, I managed to attend all sorts of events, mainly musical concerts, from bands that very rarely visit my home place. From Muse to Dream Theater to my childhood love, which was Manowar, and then back to rock music with Sum 41. I am sharing these moments because they were what flared up my old passion, the love I used to have for playing music myself. After spending the first few holiday nights at my parents' place, I got to their basement and rediscovered my old electric guitar and my amplifier that I had almost forgotten there for more than 6 years. You can imagine that the playing was very clumsy, but I managed to pull out some chords and basic melodies. My job had made me forget about music, but now that I have found my passion again, I vowed not to lose it again. It was honestly a wholesome moment when I managed to relearn some old songs and play them while singing out with the family like we did back when I was just a kid. Unfortunately, reality hits you no matter what you do. And while preparing for my flight home, I did pack my guitar and a small practice amp that I had just bought, but I knew I wouldn't play with them that much. Next week, I would have to travel again, and my schedule would be really busy, so to be realistic, I would very rarely even touch the guitar. But nevertheless, I had started looking for some guitar gear, and since Google is smarter than me, while I was doing my research, it started bombarding me with ads about small portable instruments that you could easily learn. And normally, I just ditch such kinds of ads. But this time, they looked interesting. A small instrument that didn't need extensive practicing and that I could play with any time? This actually sounded practical and interesting, and the prices weren't too shabby either. I started by getting a kalimba that I saw on Facebook. My order arrived around 2 weeks after I made it, but of course, with all my traveling, I got to actually unbox it much later than planned. It was definitely as hype-worthy as advertised, but it definitely was fun. Of course, the 2 hours of practice and you're going to master it was a total bullcrap, but I used my knowledge in music theory and became pretty good at it soon. I actually took it to my next trip and managed to play with it during the short time that I was in the hotel. After that, I got hooked. I decided to make a small collection from all the pop-up ads that I was getting on my social media. Tongue drums, flutes, mini practice guitars, and mini saxophones, you name it. It was quite a fun hobby to have, and my friends were impressed by all these instruments, especially the more exotic ones. I have to be honest though, I was also proud with all the toys that I had accumulated. In the back of my mind, I kind of thought I was hoarding on useless stuff, but in general, I was very pleased that I had restarted to play music, and with a bit of effort, I managed to keep my collection tactful and neat. It was nice when I was packing for work trips now. After gathering the necessary clothes and items, I would briefly go through my instruments and pick which one I would love to play more this week. Honestly, it was like a child selecting the toys that it wanted to get for a vacation with its parents. Eventually, however, as it always happens with collectors, I run out of things to collect. It wasn't that there were no more instruments for me to buy, but basically, everything I could get was a different version of the same thing. I might be an impulsive buyer, but I still had the understanding to not get random stuff just to get my fix. I did want, however, to find some other instrument that I might have missed. From pop-up ads, I turned to more proactive ways and started to search myself. I got a few things that I had never ever seen before, but eventually these ran out as well. And I was pretty certain that I had gathered all there was. But something in me still wanted to search for something so exotic that was just not sold commercially. A limited edition musical instrument just for the selected few. I had a stupid idea that seemed so silly that I was not even daring to tell somebody else. They would laugh at my naivety. I kinda wish I had done so now. Me becoming the laughing stock of my peers would perhaps be enough to stop me from actually following my stupidity. I knew that in the dark web one can find supposedly anything. Although I had never navigated it myself, I always thought that this anything was just referring to drugs, snuff films, excessive violent scenes, and other deranged projections of the human psyche. I really didn't believe you would find simple things, such as musical instruments, in a place like that. For me, music has always been about harmony and artistic expression, with the occasional heavy metal inner turbulent shakedown. What did those have to do with murdered puppies and live-streamed awful scenes? In the end, however, I indulged in my curiosity. I started navigating the dark web. At first, it was completely pointless as I had no idea what I was doing. But I persevered, and in the end, I started understanding how to work around the complexity of the web. At first, I got normal stuff, good guitars, basses, and others, in an awfully cheap price, which made me question their authenticity. But in time, things got progressively disturbing. I visited websites that said that they had traditional string instruments with animal intestines instead of PVC strings, exactly as they were meant to be played from the start, as one of them claimed. I don't know how PETA would react to such. One of them even claimed to use strings made from humans as they produce a warmer tone with much more sustain. I didn't really believe this crap, but it was bizarre. And from strings to percussion, I can't really describe how many websites advertise using real skins of animals or humans as the drum surface. Some even claim to be utilizing a setup of wood and bones for the rest of the instrument. I was ready to close the browser software for good when I got a pop-up. The irony struck me hard. It had started with pop-up ads, and now, after so long, I got another one, in a place that a few months ago I wouldn't even be thinking of visiting. It was an ocarina. That was almost enough to turn me down already. Don't get me wrong, I love the ocarina sound, but I have gotten many myself already over the past few months, so I was almost ready to close the ad and then go to bed, but I decided to read the rest of it just because. "Not your typical ocarina," said the ad. "Yeah, right. I've heard this before. It's like all marketing specialists graduated from the same school." "This ocarina has been handcrafted just for you, and we make one unique instrument with exactly the tone you would desire. There never was or never will be another instrument like this produced ever again. We take pride in making one instrument for every customer." Interesting. I had no idea how they would do that, so my skepticism kept me from going to the purchase window still. Have you ever owned an instrument that you cannot hear, but you can feel with every single molecule of your body? Well, try us. The Infusion Ocarina is truly a work of art, specially made for you, the most demanding musician. 30-day window return policy, no questions asked. Are you ready to take your music to the next level? Well, shit. That was intriguing, I cannot deny. And it was just $50. So, worst case scenario, I would just throw it away or return it. No big deal. It wouldn't be the first time anyway. I did check to see if that too was made from any freaky material, and I was pleased to see that it was just made from maple and ebony. I moved on to the customize and purchase option. There, I had to laugh. There were no questions about what kind of sound I liked or what other preferences I had. It just asked for a few general questions, but not anything too personal. It was more like making a sketch of my character than getting my preference. I really didn't think their claims were legit at this point, but I continued anyways. The last part was the mailing window, and it was the strangest thing so far. The thing would arrive in approximately 2 weeks, during which time I would be on another job trip in Netherlands. Therefore, I gave the address of my local post office so that I would receive the parcel after coming home. And the moment that I clicked on the location I wanted, the system changed it automatically. The address given was the address of my hotel in Netherlands. What the hell? How was that even possible? I tried adding the delivery address that I wanted again, and it switched back by itself. This was mesmerizing, and honestly, scary. I had the bright idea of changing the preferred delivery date to a day that I would be home, and this time, my address was not messed up with. I was really scared that the retailer apparently knew personal info that I had never given, and at this moment, I really wanted to just stop everything and never get in that site again. But I figured out that, since they already knew that much about me, I might as well order. And now, I really wanted to know how deep the rabbit hole was, and so I purchased it. I remember while pressing the confirm button that I was reading reviews from other customers. You have to get this. It's a lifetime experience. My life was changed forever. Any other music is simply inferior. I was now so curious about that mysterious thing that I couldn't wait. I opted for the fastest delivery date, and sure enough, I received the parcel a few weeks later from the receptionist of my hotel in Netherlands. Back in my room, I opened the package. The ocarina was colored partially light brown and partially black, basically the colors of the woodwork used. When I turned it around, however, I read the capitals JM written in dark red color with calligraphic letters. My initials. Why were they written on it? I had never given my real name. How much did those people know about me anyway? I should have never played that damn thing. But I almost felt like I wasn't controlling my body as I was bringing the ocarina to my mouth, and I played the first note. I could hear nothing with my ears. However, I felt chills throughout my entire body. It was like the sound was coming from within me, and I could only listen to it in my head. It felt like my soul was pulsating instead of the air, producing an otherworldly soundless tune. I had to keep playing. I already knew how to play an ocarina, and the infusion was tuned like a normal one. I played songs that I had learned before, but it felt like I was hearing them for the first time. It was the most melodic thing that I have ever heard, but it was also terrifying. It felt like I was running through all human emotions at the same time. I was happy. I was scared, depressed, and shocked at the same time. All the sounds had faded around me, and it seemed like I had my heartbeat and my blood pulse for percussion perfectly in tune with my ocarina. I had never felt like this before, experiencing every emotion that I have ever had in one go. I finished my last song, tears streaming down my face. I heard a car passing by, and the normal sound it makes sounded like a cacophony of a million terrible things. I cringed so hard at the noise, then I collapsed. When I woke up, I realized that any kind of sound seemed false to me. I tried playing with a kalimba that I had with me. It sounded awfully out of tune, and the normally soothing tunes were now all the wrong sounds. Even my own voice echoed like a banshee's in my ear. I looked at the ocarina. It was on the floor where it had fallen after I had faded out. I picked it up and hesitantly played it again. The feelings overwhelmed me again, like they had done before. It was the only beautiful sound in the whole world. That night, I didn't sleep well. I was ravaged by nightmares of dark figures haunting me and mocking me. In fact, since that fateful day, I haven't been able to sleep in peace. I've been having constant nightmares since then, and they get worse by the night. My life hasn't been going better as well. I am constantly tired by the loss of sleep, and the worst thing is that I grew to hate every single sound in the world. I tried getting back to my beloved guitar back home. It was so terrible that I honestly felt that the noise it made as I was breaking it into pieces was almost better. Same thing with all the other instruments. Pieces of junk, all of them. I tried to find comfort in the arms of my beloved girlfriend, but she wouldn't understand why I didn't want to listen to a word she said. She tried to comfort me, but her annoying voice was unbearable now. But it was actually a voice which used to make me smile every morning when I woke up. I sent her away, telling her that if she didn't shut up, I would go insane. And she left me, wiping tears uncontrollably and cursing me loudly as I was covering my ears to avoid the noise. The sleep deprivation was getting to me. I started mixing the creatures that I was seeing in my dreams with reality. I started believing they were real and were drawn to me by the tunes of my ocarina. And for some reason, this makes so much sense when I think about it. Honestly, I hope they are, so that I will get to stop suffering from this awful, noisy, and out-of-tune world. My only happiness came from playing the ocarina, and while I was at it, all my demons would subside, and all the outer sounds would stay silent. My entire existence was focused into my art. I would play it until I had no breath left, and then collapse on my bed, where legions of unspeakable things would then haunt me until I eventually woke up, drenched in sweat. I did manage to find a small comfort, however. In a desperate move, I pressed 2 pencils deep in my ears, destroying my eardrums forever. The pain was unbearable, and I was screaming like a wounded monster. But finally, everything went silent. After I called the ambulance, I remember smiling, since I was finally in total silence. The pain was excruciating, but at least it was quiet. And after my admission to the hospital, I was brought for psychiatric evaluation. Fortunately, I was able to go home and was prescribed some medication. I accepted it, although I knew already that it wouldn't work. And since then, I've stayed home. I am permanently deaf now, but that's the least of my problems. The drugs are of course not working, and the demons in my head are more real than ever before. And I live every day in fear and pain. Each morning is worse than the previous, and I don't know how much time I have before I go completely insane. The only thing I have left is my ocarina. I am playing it from dawn to dusk. It keeps the fear away and helps me find some serenity. Some will argue that this was the cause of my fall, but when I play it, the world truly seems like a better place. All in all, despite some minor inconveniences that come with this instrument, the end result is the most life-changing experience that you've ever experienced. There is nothing quite like it. I strongly recommend you get one of those. It has truly made me happy. I have always found creepy, mysterious things fascinating. I always have, even as a kid. My parents used to put me to bed by telling me scary stories. Scary stories about monsters, vampires, witches, and ghouls. And I like to refer to these kinds of stories as old school scary stories. These are nothing like the stories you hear about nowadays with murderers and kidnappers. Unlike vampires and monsters, murderers and kidnappers are actually real, making it more frightening. Old school scary stories never scared me that much because I knew that none of those were real. It was fake. It was all fake. After all, there's no point in being scared of things that aren't real, right? Well, that's initially what I told myself whenever I would get scared. However, I had no idea what lay in store for me as I got older. I'm currently 20 years old, and I live alone just outside of town in a tiny apartment. I'm a student with a part-time job, so a tiny apartment is sadly all I can afford. And my best friend Emily comes to visit me sometimes. We have been best friends since middle school. Emily and I had decided to have a sleepover at my place this weekend. Emily was going to sleep on an air mattress while I took the bed. And the days leading up to the weekend consisted of studying, working, and sleeping. And when Friday finally showed up, I got excited. I waited until Emily was done working her shift, and then she came over to my apartment. It was around 8 p.m. when she turned up. We had something to eat and sat down to watch a movie. When the movie was done, the clock struck 11 p.m. Emily went to the bathroom while I started tidying up a bit. But my phone suddenly vibrated. I didn't check it at first because I thought nothing of it. But little did I know, that would be the biggest mistake of my life. After I was done tidying up, I realized that Emily had spent an unusual amount of time inside the bathroom. I grew a little concerned about her absence, but I quickly shoved it away, reassuring myself that she was probably just fixing her makeup or something. I sat down on the couch and checked my phone. It was a snap from Emily. She had sent me a picture. That's odd, I thought to myself. The concerned feeling I had a moment ago came back stronger. I tried reassuring myself again. Maybe she had sent me a snap to show me that she was fine. I opened the snap. I screamed, and I was horrified. How could this have happened? I was right here. Tears started streaming down my face. I was sitting on the couch shaking like a chihuahua. The snap contained a picture of an unconscious Emily with the words, "Looks like your friend needed a timeout." I rushed to the bathroom as quickly as possible. That was probably a dumb decision, but at that point, I didn't even care because I had to help Emily. And when I opened the bathroom door, there was no sign of anyone. There wasn't even a sign of a break-in or an open window or nothing. How on earth could someone have broken into my home? I had been in the apartment all day, and I started panicking. I had to call the police, and I pulled out my phone and dialed the emergency number. A policeman picked up the phone. "Hello, what's your emergency?" And I answered hurriedly. Hello, my name is Mia Cavanaugh. I live at 34 Park Hill Avenue. My friend Emily Fieldman has gone missing. You need to hurry, please." And the policeman on the other line replied, "Okay, we'll be there right away." I hung up the phone and sat down on the couch. My phone vibrated again. I knew I had to look, but I didn't want to. I picked up the phone and saw another snap from Emily. I opened it. It was a picture of a terrified Emily with a knife held to her throat and a person with a black mask standing behind her. On the picture it read, "Be careful what you say to the police, or this girl gets it." I tried to study the background, but I couldn't make out anything. It was all black behind them, and the picture had been taken with a blitz showing only Emily and the other person in the mask. From the looks of it, the person in the mask seemed to be a man. Regardless, how did they know that I had spoken to the police literally seconds after I hung up the phone? Well, at least I had evidence now because of the picture they had sent me. But a thought quickly appeared in my head. If they knew that I had spoken to the police, then they would have found out if I had shown the police this picture. And if they had found out about it, then they would kill Emily. I had to find the perpetrators on my own, or else I'm afraid Emily was going to die. The police showed up about 10 minutes after our phone call. I opened the door and greeted them, and I knew I had to lie to them, so I said, "It was a false emergency. Emily had to go to the store without me knowing. I am terribly sorry." The police I had talked to on the phone looked stern and replied, "Are you sure? Because if that's the case, you have a risk of facing a $1,000 fine or ending up in prison." I answered, "Yeah, I'm sure. I am so sorry. I really did think she was gone." The policeman sighed and said, "Well, you sounded pretty concerned on the phone, so we believe you. We'll let you off with a warning this time, but if it happens again, you'll be charged with a $1,000 fine. Worst case scenario, there's a possibility of you ending up in jail, so please be careful when you're calling us for emergencies." I then replied, "Yes, absolutely, it won't happen again. Goodbye." The policeman answered, "Goodbye, have a safe night and take care of yourselves." The police then left and I closed the door. My phone vibrated again. I knew who it was immediately. I looked at it. A snap from Emily, and I opened it. There was a picture of Emily tied up in a chair. Her eyes were red and puffy like she had been crying a lot. And the text on the picture read, "Good job, love. We'll reward you for your cooperation." I sighed and thought, what reward are they talking about? I'm not even sure if I wanted a reward. My phone vibrated again. Another snap from Emily. This time, it was a picture of a warehouse with some cars in it with a text saying, "This is your first clue as to where Emily is hiding." The picture that I had got was from a warehouse, but it was dark and it was hard to make out where it was. I suddenly spotted some cars lined up in the far back, and those cars looked really familiar. That's when a thought popped into my head. Of course, they're in the abandoned warehouse for cars. That used to be me and Emily's hangout spot when we needed a break from the world. And I knew what I had to do. I drove my car to the old warehouse and parked it outside the building. I went in, but nothing. The sun had gone down, so naturally, the warehouse was pitch black. The only sound that could be heard was my footsteps as I tried to find my way in the darkness. And I took out my phone and turned on the flashlight. And I tried to find a light switch, but I had no luck. I walked further in and discovered a door. I opened it, and on the left side of the door on the wall was a light switch. I flicked the switch, but there was no light. Of course, I thought to myself. This place is abandoned. There's no electricity here. And in the middle of the room was a chair. I approached the chair cautiously. I was afraid someone was going to jump out of the darkness and then kidnap me too, but nothing happened. I looked at the chair and realized that this had been the chair that Emily was tied to, but she wasn't there. "Hello?" I said, getting nervous. "I did what you asked me to. Now, where's Emily?" But to my dismay, no one answered. My eyes then fell upon the cars that were lined up, and I spotted a note hanging on the windshield. I made my way to the cars and took the note. It read, "Here's your second clue." I turned the note around, but there was nothing there. And I looked up trying to spot something, but the room only held a chair and the cars. My phone vibrated. I took it out knowing who it was. Another snap from Emily. I opened it to be faced with a tree. Why in the world would it be of a tree? I studied the background as well as the tree, and that's when I realized it. That was the tree that Emily and I had carved into the wood that we would be best friends forever. I recognized that one of the branches had grown in an odd way, but that's what made it special. That's what made me and Emily choose that tree. I just really wish that I was right and not that the kidnappers had taken a picture of just another tree. I had to try for Emily's sake. I drove to where the forest was and then parked it up in the parking lot by the entrance to the woods. I got out and started to walk up that all too familiar path. While walking further into the forest, a flashback suddenly hit me. A flashback from the first time Emily and I walked here together. Some boys in our class chased us all the way up here because they wanted to beat us up. So we ran from them and hid in the woods. And that's when we decided that we would be best friends forever. After walking for a while, I had to turn away from the path and head into the thick forest, where there was no path to guide me anymore. This walk took longer than I had remembered. Because of everything that had happened, it felt like 1 minute lasted for 20 minutes. I started to pray to God to keep Emily safe and that I would find her in time. And to be quite honest, I wasn't really a Christian, but I was just so desperate. It was better to be safe than sorry, so I started to run because I wanted to spend as less time as possible. I got there soon enough after my little run, but there was nobody there. I walked up to the tree and I found the carving. Our carving. E plus M equals BFF. Looking at it, I smiled, remembering the good times. I traced my finger alongside the E in the carving. And that's when my emotions got the best of me. I started to cry. I hugged the tree, wishing it was Emily who stood in my arms and not the tree. And after I had cried a whole lot, I had to start looking for clues. I stopped hugging the tree and I began my hunt. After a little while with no luck, my phone vibrated again. Yet another snap from Emily. I pulled out my phone and opened the snap. I could tell that the picture was taken in our schoolyard, in the place where Emily and I first met each other. I couldn't see Emily in the picture though, and that freaked me out. I placed my phone in my pocket and I had to get there as fast as I could, so I ran down to my car and then I drove off. I parked my car in the school's parking lot and then I got out. I had to find Emily. It was the only thing on my mind right now. I started walking down the schoolyard. I couldn't see anything. My head turned to the side. And that's when I spotted the place, which was where the picture was taken. My first encounter with Emily. And all the memories came flooding back. The same old tiny shed with the same old tree beside it. I walked towards it. I had a feeling that I would find my next clue. Or better yet, Emily in there. And as I got closer, I noticed someone had left the door to the shed ajar. I opened the door to the shed and looked inside. It was dark, but the room was illuminated by the moon. There was a desk and a chair standing in the middle of the room. I walked to the desk and found a note. The note read, "Final destination is Emily's place. Can you reach us in time?" I waited for the distinctive sound of the Snapchat notification. Nothing happened. I couldn't stand here all night, so I ran back to my car and then sped off towards Emily's place. I sat the whole trip just hoping that Emily was okay, and I couldn't think of anything else. I reached Emily's place as fast as I could and I ran inside. There was nobody there. I admit that maybe barging into Emily's home, like I just did, wasn't the greatest idea. But I was desperate. I tried to call out Emily's name, but no one answered. I searched downstairs for her, but to no avail. I went upstairs, but could not see anything. And her room was the last room that I checked. She had to be there. Of course. Why did I not look in there at first? I am so stupid, I thought to myself while opening the door. And what greeted me next horrified me. Emily's dead body lay on the floor. I ran over to her and held her limp body in my arms. I started sobbing. I couldn't believe it. How could this happen? I hugged her even though I knew she wouldn't hug me back. And I sat there for what felt like an eternity, hugging her tight, like I would never let her go. I had lost my dearest best friend, the one who was always there for me, the one who knew more about me than anyone else. I spotted her computer while I sat hugging her. It was turned on. I lay Emily gently down on the ground again, and I went to investigate it. When I got to her computer, I saw that it was logged into the dark web. Did she use the dark web? A chat was opened where I could see that she had been talking to a hacker who threatened her. I crossed out the page because it was just too menacing to watch. When the page disappeared, I found some videos of me on her computer. I pressed play on one of them, and it showed me while I looked for her in my apartment. There was another video of me when I was at the warehouse, and another one of me when I was in the woods hugging the tree. They filmed me while I searched for Emily, and that's how they knew when to send me snaps. I looked up and found screenshots of Emily and I's chat, the times when we talked about the places that I had been to tonight, like the tree and the place we first met. That's how they knew that these places meant something to us. "What is this?" I said to myself, overwhelmed with everything that I was seeing. My phone vibrated suddenly. I took it out and I looked at it. Another snap from Emily. My heart started to beat faster, and a tear fell from my eye. I got so scared. I knew who it was. I plucked up what was left of my courage once again, and I opened it. It was a picture of me from behind. And I suddenly heard Emily's closet door creak open. I whipped my head around and gasped. It couldn't be. Some people are terrified of going on the dark web. Most people wouldn't even know where to begin. But me? I've gotten way too comfortable searching the bowels of the deep web and its darkest corners of depravity. I work as a fence of sorts, taking advantage of most people's technical ineptitude. I make a profit from selling illicit items to folks in my hometown. Once upon a time, I got these things from other sources. But nowadays, you can get anything, and I mean anything, delivered to your door with a click of a mouse. It's cheap and surprisingly reliable. There's no such thing as morals when you have a job like I do, selling all manner of questionable items. I guess because of that, you could argue that I deserved what happened to me. I was sitting in my home office, feeling bored and lonely. Having a 2-story 4-bedroom house with a giant backyard is kind of pointless when you have nobody to share it with. And a thought occurred to me again that I should get a dog. People on Instagram and Facebook had dogs, and they all looked content and happy with their lives, out in the sun playing frisbee and rolling around on blankets in the grass. Why couldn't that be me? It had been a while since I had a real girlfriend too, so the thought of using the pooch as an icebreaker for talking to women also crossed my mind. And I got up the courage to finally do it. Then and there, deciding to get a puppy that I could raise up to be a loyal and faithful companion, to share my big house, which felt so empty. And without really thinking about it, I did what I always did when I wanted to buy something. I opened the Tor browser on my laptop and went to my favorite illicit site. For some reason, the idea of going to a normal website or to a breeder or pet store didn't cross my mind until later. In retrospect, that would have made a lot more sense. I typed in dog in the search bar, but only one ad came up, and I clicked on it. Puppy for sale, purebred Southern Wolfhound, $500, will deliver. There was a picture of a very cute little black dog. I had never heard of a southern wolfhound before. It didn't look like one that I had ever seen. And then again, I didn't know much about dogs. Not being one for shopping around, I punched in my credit card info and clicked on the buy button. A few days later, a wide-eyed and nervous-looking delivery man knocked on my door. At his feet sat an oversized dog crate that was pitch black inside. Nothing could be seen within it. His trembling hands passed me a tablet and I signed for the delivery and brought the heavy crate into my house. The dog was a lively one, I thought to myself. When I picked up the crate, it started moving restlessly inside, feeling more like a giant python than a puppy. Its weight didn't seem to match what I had seen in the picture. I wondered briefly if there had been some sort of shipping mistake, and I almost ran back after the delivery guy. But when I opened it up, there it was. An adorable black puppy wandered out hesitantly and then ran over to me. My fears were instantly assuaged as the little scamp began to lick my face and I fell on my back laughing. I let it jump on me and we rolled on the ground and played on the floor for a while. A smile stretched wide across my face and I felt truly happy as I played with the little dog. I took the puppy around the house for a tour, showing him the upstairs first, my bedroom and the office, and he sniffed around the guest room that I had never used and another that was for storage. I showed him the basement to the little bed that I had bought for him, and he didn't seem particularly interested in it. The strangest thing about the puppy was his weight. He was a hefty little guy. When I tried to pick him up, he weighed a ton. And it didn't make sense. The more I thought about it, the more it made me feel uncomfortable and jittery. Like the dog was a hole in the universe leading to unreality. A black hole leading to some other dark place that I didn't want to see. Trying not to dwell too much on that, mostly because it made my brain feel like it was going to turn into scrambled eggs if I did. I decided to take my new puppy out for a walk at the park. I tried to put the leash on him that I had recently bought, but it never seemed to fasten quite right. It was like the collar was too small for him, but it wasn't. I could see that clearly. My mind felt fragmented and wrong as I struggled with it, seeing two realities for a split second. In one reality, I could see my puppy. The other image was like a piece of rolled glass in a shattered mirror, revealing a tremendous wolf-like hound. Its fur was missing in places, bone and exposed muscle peeking out from between its haunches and ribs. The beast's ancient knowing face was full of sharp teeth, bared and snarling at me. Wise, experienced eyes stared through my soul, milky white with cataracts, and dirt was all over the hound and old blood like it had been digging in a graveyard. Soon, we were walking down the street to the park, despite the fact that I had no memory of leaving my house. The puppy was back to being a puppy, and he was off leash, I noticed. Still, he seemed to be managing well enough. He was staying close by me and was quick to respond when I called to him. It was as if he was already well trained despite his young age. So I decided to just continue on and kept walking towards the park with him. It was a Tuesday afternoon and it was quiet outside, and I didn't see anyone until we got there. Once we got to the park, I saw a few other people were out walking with their dogs in a large open space. It was a huge grassy field, and people would often let their dogs off leash despite the official rules to the contrary. So, I didn't feel as out of place with the pup roaming free there as I had been walking down the street with him. At first, nobody noticed us. But then, the dogs picked up the puppy's scent, one by one. They perked up their ears and stood stock still, staring at us. And they appeared terrified. My little pup, who I hadn't even had time to name yet, began to run towards them. I saw the stunned faces of the dog's owners. Their jaws dropped and they looked suddenly horrified for some reason. I didn't understand it. My dog was just a little puppy. They turned and began to flee. What were they so afraid of? I wondered, chasing after the little guy. And that's when it happened again. A little piece of my life went missing. 1 second, I was there in the park running after the dog. And the next, we were back home again. It was as if I had just lost the last little bit of my life. It seemed like just a second before, we had been in the park and I had been calling after my puppy as he ran away from me, chasing after him. But now, we were back in my living room watching television, an old rerun of The Office on Netflix. Pulling out my cell phone, I checked the time and it was 4:30 p.m. More than 2 hours had passed. I looked down to see the puppy was at my feet, sleeping soundly. At least he was safe. But that didn't make the blackout that I had just experienced feel any better. "What happened, boy?" I asked the dog, as if he would be able to tell me. He just kept snoring, and I noticed that there was blood on his paws and on his face. Feeling more scared than I had been in a long time, I tried to recall what had happened. Nothing came back to me, no matter how hard I searched my memories. And this had never happened before, and it really frightened me. I hoped my memories would come back to me, but they never did. And worse yet, over the following weeks it happened again and again, the blackouts. Every time that I left the house with a dog, my life would seem to disappear. Time would disappear. I would step out the door, then find myself immediately back inside with hours missing from my day. The blank periods would get longer and longer, and after a couple weeks, I was up to missing 8-hour chunks from my life, which I could remember no details from. It seemed to always be when I left the house. So I started doing that less and less, hiding indoors and never leaving my home. I ordered my groceries delivery, and I became a hermit. The puppy seemed content though, and he was growing at a rapid pace. Despite the fact that we spent all hours together, even I could notice the changes. Overnight, he seemed to sprout up a couple inches, and every morning I would see he was bigger than before. And when I looked at the dog, every worry that I had about the missing fragments of my life disappeared. Only the puppy mattered. He was what was important. The warmth I felt when I was holding him, and how he looked at me like I was the only thing that mattered to him as well. Eventually, my friends started to get concerned about me. My old buddy Tom called, saying that he hadn't seen me in a while. I told him that I was fine, I just didn't want to leave the house because I had a new puppy. Telling him the truth didn't occur to me, but maybe I should have. Maybe I could have prevented what happened next. I didn't ask Tom to come over. He just stopped by one evening, a day or two after our phone call. We were such good friends that he didn't even wait for me to answer after knocking on the door. He just walked in. The dog had grown considerably by that point, and he stood up at attention when Tom walked in, and the wolfhound immediately bolted for the front door. My old friend was halfway through saying, "Hello," before he began to scream. Again, the world fragmented and split, and I saw two versions of my dog. One of them was the cute little guy that I knew and loved, and the other was the decaying graveyard hellhound that I had glimpsed before, massive and mangy, missing bits of flesh and fur, and eager to attack. Before Tom had a chance to run, my dog was on him. The hellhound was on him. He jumped up on him, knocking him to the ground, and quickly, he was on his neck with his paws and ripped the flesh from his face while he screamed and clawed at the door, trying to escape. I ran over to pull the dog off my old friend, and when I reached out to grab him, to try to stop him as he tore muscle from bone and gouged out Tom's eyes with his teeth, he snapped at me. The sharp teeth scraped off my fingers, and I looked down horrified to see a glimpse of my own shiny white phalanges staring back at me, hair-covered knuckle flesh dangling limply from the exposed bone. I recoiled from him, screaming, and ran. Tom was already dead by the time that I got upstairs. His screams cut short as the evil wolf ripped out his larynx. Slamming the door to my office shut behind me, I locked the door. I am back in my office where all this started. I'm terrified to go back out that door, now that a hellhound has a taste of my flesh. I doubt that he'd be able to resist. I can hear him sniffing and scratching outside already, hungry again after consuming every last bit of my oldest and best friend. There wasn't much to do other than wait for my inevitable demise, so I decided to browse the dark web again. I wanted to see something. I went back to the same hidden site again, navigating through a series of back doors to get there, clicking secret icons, hidden and obscure websites. And once I arrived there, I typed the word dog into the search bar again. The same exact ad came up, identical. Puppy for sale, purebred Southern Wolfhound, $500, will deliver. This time, I decided to send a direct message to the seller, someone named Lycan. I said, "Hey, I bought one of your dogs and it just killed my friend. I'm pretty sure it's eating my memories too." Lycan answered,
"The creature you have purchased is no dog. It's a Variocolocus, an undead creature which sustains itself on flesh and blood, like a werewolf zombie, kinda."
I answered, "Sounds more like a zombie werewolf to me. Can I please have a refund?" And Lycan said,
"No, all sales are final."
Lycan has exited the chat. With that, he disappeared back into the ether and left me with a beast scratching at my door, trying to get in. It won't be long before he gets through the door, I'm sure. And when he gets in, I'm not sure what he'll do, but I've got a pretty good idea. When my brother Noel went missing last year, the police were of little help. They told us not to worry, that it was far more difficult to disappear than it was made to look on TV or in the movies. Most people turn up on their own after a while, and their families find out, or pretend to find out, that the missing person's life was a little less respectable than they had claimed, a little bit darker and more mysterious. Some people live two lives, and nobody knows it but them. I did my own research and found this much was true. According to statistics, the chance of abduction by a stranger was less probable than being struck by lightning. You were much more likely to be kidnapped by someone you knew, and far more likely still to not be kidnapped at all. But despite their vague assurances and unfounded assumptions, Noel never did come back. The weeks and months went by, and there was no word, and it seemed like the police had given up or forgotten about him. Digging through his belongings, I tried desperately to find something that would give a clue to his whereabouts, and his computer was the best bet, I figured, since it was where he spent the majority of his time. Noel had worked as a database specialist for a big company named Proteon, and despite the fact that he had explained what he had did to me a number of times, I never could properly figure it out. If people ask, I told them he was a computer programmer, since that was at least something most people could understand. He was an expert at assembling and troubleshooting computers, since my dad had owned a PC repair business when we were kids, and Noel had taken quickly to technology as a child. He was building machines for my dad's customers in his spare time when he was still in his teens, and later, he went to college for computer sciences and only become more proficient over the years. Lately, he'd been experimenting with app design in his spare time and had gotten pretty good at it. He had told me that he was working on one app in particular that was extremely different from anything else on the market. I had hoped that the other programmer that he had been working with would know something, but I tracked him down, and that resulted in a dead end as well. Upon meeting the guy I found, he was peculiar, a disheveled-looking Satanist who refused to make eye contact with me and offered no useful information. He told me Noel had been of great help in his project, but said the rest was top secret. So, I went home defeated once again. Noel's old computer was set up on my desk, so I turned it on and sat down, resolved to do some more digging. I logged into his email. Luckily, Google had saved all his passwords, so I didn't need to try to figure them out through impossible guesswork. And searching through his old emails, I had found a lot of junk mail. There was a correspondence with work and family and a few with friends, but nothing that gave any clue as to where he might be. If anything, they painted a picture of someone living an ordinary life, making plans for the future, with no indication of wanting to disappear. His phone had been left behind too, and I went through that as well, just looking for anything strange that stood out. But there was nothing. I sat there at my desk with my mouse in my hand for days, then weeks, looking for something, anything of use. I poured through his doc files, JPEGs, MP4s and MP3s, PDFs and every other damn file type that you can imagine, examining everything, desperately searching for some hint, some clue. And everything turned out to be a dead end. Of course, I called the police frequently as well, but they were of no help, and eventually went as far as to tell me to stop calling, saying that they would update me if they found anything. I had cursed at them furiously and hung up, and that had been the end of that. I went back on his computer one night to dig through some more file folders, and I noticed something that my eyes had scanned over in the past. An icon and the sea of icons that lived on the busy and disorganized desktop. It looked a bit like a purple onion with a slice cut out of it. I clicked on it, and a dialog box with a loading bar appeared briefly. Then, a purple window opened up that looked like a web browser, and I realized that was exactly what it was. Tor browser, it said at the top. I knew little about these things, but understood that this was an untraceable way to use the internet, since it encrypted everything being done online. Thinking back, I remembered Noel talking about using Tor. He said it was much safer and that it couldn't be traced. But why would he care about being traced? I had thought at that time. Maybe there was a good reason after all. Suddenly, my cell phone chimed and I went over to it quickly and I looked at the message. It was a URL. Another text came through, and this one was a typed message from someone.
Enter the URL on Tor.
Another ding, another message.
Tell no one about this. If you contact anybody, I'm gone. I'm your only chance at finding him.
I looked at Noel's computer. That was when I noticed the little lens at the top of his monitor that was the built-in webcam. The red light was on next to it, indicating that it was recording. Someone was watching me, and they could see what I was doing on the computer as well. I was sure of it. I texted back, "Doing it now." After typing the URL exactly as instructed, the screen turned into a login for a website of some kind. I received another text.
Password is his favorite movie. You have 2 minutes.
I didn't need 2 minutes for that at least, since I knew it was Fight Club, as it had been since that movie had been released. My hands were shaking as I typed the password into the box. I was beginning to feel very concerned, but also a bit hopeful at this sudden turn of events. A chat window opened up and a message promptly appeared from someone named Shadowcat. Shadowcat said,
You're his brother, I take it.
I typed back a response quickly, afraid of losing whoever this was. It felt like they could disappear at any second back into the ether, and I would never find them again. I answered, Yes. Do you know where he is?
Yes.
I was a little confused as to why my name was appearing in the chat window as Mark, since that wasn't my name, and I had never entered any identifiers. Was that an alias that Noel used online? I wondered. I asked, Is he okay? I took a deep breath, waiting for the answer.
More or less.
What do you want?
You'll find out soon.
Another message came through, showing another URL. Shadowcat said,
Keep chat open. Create a new window and go to the URL.
And I answered, Okay. I typed in the URL and found myself at another website. It was a bit like eBay, except instead of selling old records and jewelry, people were selling guns, explosives, drugs, and some very disturbing categories of pornography. What the hell is this? Shadowcat.
Never mind your questions for now. Do what I say, or he dies.
Suddenly, an image appeared, replacing the chat window. It showed my brother Noel chained to a wall in a stressed position. He was blindfolded and gagged, but I could hear his muffled screams for help. My hands were shaking, nearly uncontrollably, now that I had to type and retype my reply several times before it made any sense. How do I know you'll give him back?
Trust me or don't. The choice is yours. If you refuse, he dies. If you do what I say, I will give him back to you unharmed.
It seemed there was no other option. I felt trapped and hopeless, depressed, in this horrible situation that I had found myself in. If I called the police, he would see me do it on the webcam. If I said no, he would kill Noel.
You have 10 seconds to decide.
And a countdown began on the screen.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4.
Okay.
Good. Here is your shopping list. Get everything on it.
A long list of items was included next, and my eyes widened further as I read through it. What the hell is all of this for? What are you planning to do? The chat window closed suddenly, and I was left alone in my living room, my heart beating fast and hard in my chest. Only the other website remained now, the one with the black market guns and explosives, and everything else illegal that you could find, and everything else illegal that you could have delivered to your doorstep. I debated calling the police again, telling them these new developments, or even going to the police station. But what if the kidnapper found out? He obviously had ways to spy on me. Probably you'll say I'm an idiot for what I did next, but I really wanted to get my brother back. So, I filled the online shopping cart with the requested illicit items and entered my credit card information, cringing as I hit enter. I guess I would have to cancel my credit card since I didn't trust the vendors one bit, but at least that part was done. The package arrived in the mail surprisingly quickly, and as soon as I had brought it inside, I got another text message. It invited me to another chat on tour, where I was given a physical address. They said to meet them there with a package and that they would give me back my brother. I was to tell no one where I was going. It was dark by the time that I had arrived at the old warehouse in the industrial section of town. The place was abandoned, and there were no lights to illuminate the parking lot as I pulled in. My trunk had some cargo in it that would surely get me a couple decades in prison, if not more. Terrified, I sat in my car, still gripping the steering wheel tightly with both hands, despite the car being turned off, and I had no idea what was going to happen next. My cell phone chimed and I nearly jumped out of my skin. It was a text message.
Come inside through the east door.
I did a bit of a quick geography to determine which way I was facing and decided that was the door that I was looking at, right in front of me. Taking a deep breath, I got out of the car. I popped the trunk and grabbed the duffel bag that I had brought with the illicit items packed inside. The gravel crunched beneath my feet as I made my way across the parking lot. My hand shook as I reached out and grasped the doorknob, turned it, and went into the dark cavernous space inside the warehouse. As difficult as it was to see outside, it was even darker in there. Taking a few more frightened steps forward, I found my eyes did not adjust to the dark. The door clanged and shut behind me, and I jumped, feeling my heart skip a beat. "Hello?" My voice echoed back behind me.
Did you bring everything?
I jumped, startled, when I heard the voice. It was raspy and high-pitched and made the hair stand up on the back of my neck at the sound of it, like fingernails across a chalkboard. Yes.
Good. Bring it this way.
Terrified, I stepped forward into the pitch blackness, unsure if I would run into something. I moved slowly and deliberately, hoping not to hurt myself.
He's got it for us.
He has it all.
Yes.
Suddenly, I realized there was not just one voice speaking, but many, They were all around me, surrounding me in the darkness, and I felt their movements in the air around me and heard sounds like the wind blowing during a thunderstorm.
Poisons,
Acids,
knives,
explosives,
boomed a voice from the corner.
guns and bullets and snake venom.
I heard them moving closer now, inching towards me. Their voices were in my ears as I backed away. "Where is my brother? Show him to me or you get nothing." I was terrified, but determined to get Noel back, come hell or high water.
Or maybe we'll keep you as well, little brother. Maybe someone will want you back badly enough to bring us more offerings, more dark treasures.
I could feel them very close now, could hear their breathing and feel their proximity to me, causing my skin to break out in goosebumps. My mind raced, desperate to think of what I could do to get out. These creatures, these demons, whatever they were, had no intention of letting me leave. And I had a sudden brainstorm. I reached out into my pocket and pulled out my cell phone. Quickly, I hit the button for the flashlight function. If there was anything these creatures would be affected by, I guess by their choice of habitat, and it would be light. "These are demons born of darkness," my lizard brain whispered. "They are not accustomed to anything but blackness." And the white light cut through the darkness like a knife. I heard screams and saw a brief haze of smoke appear. Around the edges of the light, I caught glimpses of vague forms of humanoid shapes. They recoiled from the light, and I felt and heard them moving towards me from behind. Spinning, I cast the light just in time to see one of the demons nearly face to face with me. His form was massive and bear-like, huge fangs and long sharp talons raised in the air, ready to slit my throat. His red flesh bubbled and burst open. He evaporated into a misty haze when the light hit him, screaming in a deafening baritone. Realizing that the light had the power to destroy them now, or at least send them back to hell where they came from, I spun around and round with the light, trying to incinerate them all. And I saw them flying bat-like away. Others jumped up to the high ceiling and hid in the girders and beams above. I saw something at the end of the huge space, and I shone my light that direction. It was Noel. He was shackled to a wall on the far side of the warehouse. He was gagged and blindfolded and moving. I saw dark shadows around him, moving quickly, and realized it was more of the demons guarding him. Running over towards him, I heard the sounds of more of them chasing after me, racing like monkeys across the steel beams above, matching my speed. I blasted the demons with bright light from my phone as I got closer to him. Their shadow skin began to sizzle and burst into flame, and they howled like banshees in moving away. There was no key for the chains holding him, but I was prepared. I grabbed the bolt cutters from my bag, a last-second impulse buy from my trip to the hardware store. Part of me was worried that the people that I was dealing with would not let him free willingly. I had wanted any advantage that I could get. The bolt cutters went through the chains with an effort, and the one holding his wrist snapped with a satisfying noise, and his arm fell down limply to his side. And before I could think too much about what that meant, I spun around at the sudden sound of movement behind me. I screamed as the claws of something terrible raked across my back. The demon disappeared back into the shadows above us, leaping into the air like a bat. and I saw flapping wings as it went back into the rafters. I pulled the blindfold and gag from Noel's face and saw he was barely conscious. It felt terrible to do it, but I slapped him hard across the face to try and get him to wake up. He groaned and stared but didn't open his eyes. And I felt a sharp pain in my neck suddenly, like knives there, and I spun around quickly again to try and catch it in the light. There was a hint of smoke as my flashlight caught the edge of it, but it was too fast and quickly disappeared again. I was suddenly feeling frantic and terrified for my life. They were becoming more bold. My hand stung after the next hard slap to Noel's face, but it accomplished what I needed. He woke up and spit blood from his mouth. Ow! What the hell? Noel, wake up! You need to hold this light. Move it around. Keep them away. It took him a few seconds to understand, but I thrust the phone in his hand anyways and began to work on the other chain holding his right wrist. His eyes were wide with fear, and his gaze darted around the room as I continued working on the chains. The one holding his other wrist snapped with an effort, and I got down on the floor to work on the shackles attached to his ankles. He was moving the flashlight around frantically, but it seemed to be working. Warm blood trickled down my neck and my back from my injuries, and I felt it turn cold on my skin. How the hell did you wind up here? I asked, once he was finally freed from the chains. That damn Satanist programmer. He summoned those things from hell. What? How? Never mind, just let's get out of here. I took the flashlight back from him and used it as a weapon, shining it in every direction, and often just in time as I saw the demon scatter from the light like cockroaches each time that I swung it around. Once we reached the door, I threw it open, revealing the parking lot, and we ran from there as fast as we could back to the car. We had escaped, or so we thought. I wish I could say that everything is better now, that we fled from the demons in that warehouse and never saw them again. But those unnatural creatures knew no boundaries. They were not inclined to stay contained within the walls of that warehouse, and they were not pleased that we had escaped with their treasures, which I promptly dumped off at the police station, anonymously of course. Although I got my brother back, neither one of us will ever feel safe again. The lights in my home stay on all hours of the day and night now. Noel is the same way. I sleep during the day and surround myself with lights at night, terrified until the sun comes up again. What am I afraid of, you ask? A blackout, a blown fuse, a burnt-out light bulb, and they happen more and more lately. Always I see them in the shadows, waiting, watching, patient, for their chance, for darkness to fall. There hadn't been a murder in Franzburg for over 5 years, not since Old Man Weathers killed his wife over a Monopoly match gone sour, and a marriage gone even sourer. Up until last week, that was. Now, I've got 3 different files sitting on my desk with 3 different victims. They stare up at me accusingly, saying, "Solve us." I pull out my bottle of Glenfiddich from the bottom drawer and find a halfway clean glass, blowing in to get rid of any dead spiders or mouse turds. I fill it up a third of the way, then decided to hell with it and make it a double. The strong smell of it wakes my senses and burns my tongue a little at first, but in a good familiar sort of way. I admire the brown liquid in the glass for a minute and then open one of the folders and begin to leaf through it for the umpteenth time. Each murder was spaced a couple of days apart, and the killer managed to sneak in and out of the victims' homes undetected. All three had their throats slit with a very sharp blade and were hung upside down in their respective residences. Their wrists and ankles were tied with thick, coarse rope. They had been left like that for hours, as if someone had been waiting for the blood to drain out, like cattle or pigs. But nobody knows where the blood went. How the hell does something like that happen in my little town? Something flares up in me momentarily, and I realize it's wounded pride. Someone has been in my town and has been killing my people, under my nose and without leaving a trace of evidence. Maybe you just can't find the evidence because you're an amateur, a hack, probably. I questioned a lot of people as one does, started with those closest to the victims, and worked my way outward trying to make connections. But murder isn't something that I have a lot of experience with. Liars, though. Liars, I can tell from a mile away. When you've been a cop long enough, you can pick 'em out easy enough. It's an acquired skill. The victims were young, in their 20s. People kill people they know. So who knew all three victims? Who had a motive to kill them? And how did they do it without getting caught? The first question requires some digging. It means interviews with people who don't want to talk. And I visit each victim's closest friends and family members. I find out that the three were all loners, with very few friends, at least not in real life. Not only that, but they knew each other. My suspicion that the murders are connected becomes a certainty. I look deeper into their lives, sussing out any details that I can find. They were all gamers, professional ones apparently, not something I had thought possible. To my surprise, when I ask about the details, the answer is always the same. Each victim was obsessed with a computer game called League of Legends. More questions lead to more answers, and eventually, after a lot of puzzle pieces coming together, I figured out how the victims were all connected. It turns out they were all in a clan together, which means they play the game together as a team. Teams in League of Legends are made up of 5 members, so that leaves 2 more people out of there, who are either potential victims or potential murderers. I have to find the other members of the clan. The 2 are like missing pieces from a jigsaw puzzle, and without them, I can't see the whole picture. So I track them down. Sarah Green is the first. She seems pleasant enough, and after inviting me inside for coffee, we talk for almost an hour, and she responds candidly and with concern for her deceased friends, but gives no useful information. "Can I get you another refill, detective?" she asked after I drained my second cup of coffee. "No, that's all right. I think I've imposed on you long enough." She walks me to the door after that and says she hopes that I will be able to find some answers. I thank her, still unsure what to make of her, and I move on to the next interview. Terry Wentworth is a chubby man with a ponytail and thick glasses. He has a patchy goatee which attempts unsuccessfully to hide a double chin with an unfortunate butt-looking cleft running down the center of it. I find myself trying not to look at it, as if to do so would be rude. "What can I do for you, officer?" he asked, looking annoyed. "I understand you played a game with these people," I say, showing him pictures of the victims. He cringes slightly. "A computer game called League of Legends, is that correct?" "Yeah? So what? I played with them." Something is off already. I can tell he is more nervous, more defensive than he needs to be. But then again, some people have bad social anxiety. Maybe he's just an anxious type. "Any infighting in the clan, Terry? Problems between members?" Nope, no, I don't think so." His palms are sweating heavily, and he wipes them on his pants, leaving huge damp spots on his upper thighs. I decide to take him down to the station, make him sweat a bit more. It works. After an afternoon in that hot box, the bastard starts talking. "Sarah, it was all her idea. I didn't even do it. It was her." This is after hours of coaxing and threatening. His shirt, now completely drenched in sweat, his hair dripping like he has just stepped out of the shower. I mentioned Sarah again, saying that he was probably going to kill her next, and the guy finally cracks and turns on her. "I just found out about it and I couldn't stop her. It was already too late. Everything had already—" Slow down. Slow down. Take a deep breath. Just calm down for a second and tell me what happened. You said it was her? She killed them?" He takes a deep, trembling breath and goes on. "No, she wasn't capable of that. Neither was I. But we weren't going to make it anywhere in the tournaments unless she could bring on a couple new pros. Real talent, I mean, not just friends who happen to play. The two of us were top-notch, but we couldn't carry the clan anymore. We kept getting knocked out early in the big tournaments." "You mean you had them killed over a video game?" "It's not just a game. There's thousands of dollars up for grabs, man. You have no idea. Millions if you're world class. And we could have been, if not for them. But like I said, it wasn't my idea. She set it all up. I didn't find it until later when I asked her." "Ask her what?" "Where the hell everybody was. They all just started disappearing, and new players started showing up to practice. First it was Lisa, then Graham went permanently AFK. Finally, she told me Wayne wasn't cutting it either, that he'd have to disappear next." "So, what did you say?" "I pretended to go along with it. That's what I do sometimes if I want to find out how far gone somebody is. I don't know if you've ever tried it, but if you ever start talking to somebody and they say something really rotten, just agree with them for a minute and see what sort of depravity their mind really contains. It's kind of astonishing." It's called Police Work 101, kid. I want to say, but don't. "All right, I'll buy it. You tell her you love whatever she's doing to clean up the team and you just want in on it. And you're curious and want to help, so she tells you?" "Damn right she does. Like, she's proud of herself. She found an assassin on the dark web, she tells me. Some guy who'll do it practically for free." "You have his name. A way to contact him." I try hard not to show my hand, but I'm getting excited at the prospect of catching this guy, and my questions come a little too fast, making him bristle momentarily. "Man, I can't tell you that. If she finds out I said anything, she's coming after me next." "Listen, kid," I say in my best friendly cop impersonation. "You're doing the right thing here, let me follow up on this and I'll make sure she goes away for a long time, for the rest of her life. You didn't do anything you say, right? So, you've got nothing to worry about, but you have to tell me the truth, everything. Now, who is this guy? He looks at me darkly and seems to brood on the question for a while, but eventually he answers. He explains to me how to reach the assassin and how it was all arranged. Sarah is sitting in front of the computer screen with a sad look on her face. He's going to kill all of us. Who is Sarah? She looks at the blank screen, dark, empty. Him. A shiver runs down my spine and my flesh breaks out in goose pimples. We can protect you from him, I say, but the promise rings hollow, my voice empty and false even to my own ears. No, you can't. She sighs and turns the computer on, waits for it to boot up. Within a few minutes, she has logged onto the Tor browser and is into some chat room. She types something into the window and waits. I hold my breath without meaning to. Suddenly, the screen goes completely dark and the chat window disappears. Despite the heat of the day, it feels cold in the room, then freezing. I exhale and can see my breath hang in the air. My teeth begin to clack together and chatter.
Who is he?
The voice is like a thunder crash coming from the computer, and I understand immediately why she was so scared. It was a wonder the speakers don't blow out. My ears are ringing, and I feel like the room is still echoing and reverberating with the sound of it. There is a presence watching us. I can feel it. I don't know how else to explain it, but it feels like when you are walking down the street and you sense someone is watching you from behind. Have you ever felt that? Like eyes are tickling your neck, and you turn and see that, of course, there is someone staring at you from the front window of their house. I feel that now, but all over, their eyes in the walls, ceiling and floors all watching me, and my skin tingles and I shiver. That's Detective Slate, she says in a monotone, betraying me immediately. He wants to catch you. I told him that's silly, but he doesn't listen. The young woman's face is visible in the reflection of the monitor, and I see her eyes staring far off into the distance, as if she is hypnotized. Then that deep voice begins to speak again, and I find myself unable to do anything but listen.
Look into the darkness, Detective Slate. Don't you want to experience it for yourself? Don't you want to sleep, Detective? Aren't you tired?
Suddenly, out of nowhere, there are 5 men grabbing me and wrestling me to the floor. My heart is beating out of my chest, and I am stunned to see that my service revolver is in my hand, clenched tight in my fist. Yet, I have no memory of removing it from its holster. The coldness of the barrel touches my temple, and my fingers is on the trigger, trying desperately to pull it, despite my terrified brain pleading for it to listen, to stop, to relax. I don't want to die. I don't want to die. And yet my index finger continues to squeeze down on the trigger as if possessed. My old partner, Stevie, who has gotten there first, is wrestling with me desperately and finally manages to pry my hand from the gun. Later, I try to explain to them that it wasn't me, that I didn't want to do it. Something made me do it. He made me do it. I look up and see Sarah is now banging her head down hard against the steel table, as if She has no control over herself. She brings her face down again and again, and blood begins to spatter and spray. Parts of her face shear off, exposing muscle and bone beneath. And still, she doesn't stop. Her teeth break and chip pieces fly and scatter everywhere. "What the hell?" another officer is saying, letting go of me and rushing over to her. Then he makes the mistake of looking at the screen as well. In rapid motion, too quickly for anyone to stop him, he pulls his pistol from the holster, cocks it, and holds the gun up to his temple. The blast is deafening in the small cement-walled room. It echoes, piercing my ears and turning them deaf for a while, then making them ring. I feel like needles are stabbing into my eardrums, and I clap my hands over them protectively. But then, my eyes betray me and I find my gaze drifting back to the beckoning blackness of the computer screen, as if a siren song for that sense is calling me to stare at the darkness of that empty black rectangle. One very savvy officer who has been watching everything with wide eyes from the doorway runs in. He was not in an angle where he could see the screen and seems unaffected by it. He slams the laptop shut and then picks it up and throws it hard on the floor where it breaks to pieces. Then, he brings his foot down on it, hard. He crunches it beneath his polished black shoe and looks up at us with a sweating, anxious face. "I'm sorry, boss," he says to me, looking worried for his job. On an ordinary day, he would have every right to be. But today is no ordinary day. I had to. Don't apologize. You just saved all of our lives. Thank you. We look around the room and take in the bloodbath which surrounds us. An officer dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. A suspect or witness dead, while in our custody from repeated blunt force injuries to her face, also self-inflicted. Officers began to crowd the room from the pit where they were stationed at their desk when the gunshot went off. People are asking 1,000 questions, and I don't know what to tell them, or what I even believe myself. The captain sends me home without pay, pending an investigation. It doesn't matter how many people vouch for me, how many saw the madness for themselves. It matters how it all looks. And there's no explaining what happened to a rational person. Even I can hardly believe it, and I witnessed it myself. I try to catch a dark web hired assassin and discover that he was no ordinary hired gun. No simple mercenary. The thing Sarah hired to kill her fellow clan members was something else. Something we as humans don't have a word for it yet, or any understanding of. Something that is spilling over into our world from another, and feeds on our flesh and blood. Somehow, I have to stop him. Okay, so I'm just gonna go right on the topic here, since my background or way of living doesn't matter in this case. As you all know, there's been quite a few accounts of people's encounters on the dark web on this sub lately. I usually read all of them because it intrigues and scares me, and maybe that's why I ended up dreaming about it a few days ago. Perhaps what I saw isn't grounded in reality, but since I've never dreamt about such things before, I figured I'll ask for your 2 cents. So let's get to it. I can't recall the fine details of most of this dream, but I do remember the basics. In the dream, I got in my hands on a Tor browser because obviously I was able to go onto the deep web. One weird thing was that the browser wasn't just a program that I downloaded to my computer, but it was inside of some sort of fancy router/modem thing that I could just plug into my computer whenever I felt like using it. I remember something about having to stay hidden from the police or just some form of authority. Anyway, let's not derail too much here. It's possible that I watched more than just one murder video in that dream, but I can only remember one, so here it goes. The video was filmed by what I assumed to be a man and a woman, judging from their voices, who had kidnapped two young women and held them bound in a dark room. The victims were laying down on their sides, and I really wasn't able to see the surroundings in the room. The camera lights only hit the two victims. I remember how I thought it was remarkable how stoic these women acted towards their kidnappers, despite being in such a situation. And I felt some sort of hope at that thought, a notion that whatever these kidnappers did to them, they wouldn't go down so easily. Even if their video was disturbing so far, I didn't actually feel like the kidnappers had anything on these women. I felt like they would be okay despite everything. I don't remember much of the torture either, but I remember the two women begging their kidnappers to stop doing this to them and just let them go, to which the kidnappers just kept going, snickering unmercifully. The thing that stuck with me the most is when one of the kidnappers put a nail to the thigh of one of the women, the one who they filmed the most, and also the one of them to fight back the most. He retrieved a hammer and slammed the nail right into the poor woman's thigh. I cringed at this, but somehow I couldn't stop watching. Amazingly, the woman still spat out insults at the kidnappers, even though she was clearly in pain. The kidnappers did this a few more times. They probably did other things too, before I finally decided to stop watching the video and go look for something else instead. Watching that had really brought me into some sense of guilt that I, as an unsuspecting viewer, had somehow let this happen, let these women be tortured by some sickos, and when I woke up from the dream, it has stuck with me until this moment. The reason I came here to you, No Sleep, is because I felt there's something that I should ask those of you who've actually been on the deep or shadow web. Do you recall ever actually seeing a video like the one I've just described? It's probably stupid of me, but I can't help but wonder where this dream even came from, since I've never dreamt about such things before that I can remember, and if there might be some truth to it. I was about 8 or 9 when this happened to me. At that time, using a computer was still a new thing for me. We are roughly talking about 12 years ago, where, as a kid, you only used the computer to play games, and simply searching dumb stuff on a laptop seemed like a good idea, or in my case, my grandmother's laptop. Now, a little context. I never really told anyone about this, because it's kind of a tricky conversation to come to, and the deep web at that time was pretty much still unknown where I lived. I remember that a couple of times my uncle, who we lived with and who was in his 20s, used to borrow my grandmother's laptop as his computer, and that was extremely basic at that time. Whenever he finished, he would just return it to my grandma, and she would never question anything that he downloaded to her computer at that time. Well, looking back now, they should have password protected the computer, or shut me away from it, because this shit was traumatizing. I remember looking at a blackish icon on the desktop. I don't remember the name of it, but I was curious what it was. Now looking back, I'm not actually sure what it was. So if anyone has an idea, feel free to drop it in the comments. Now, when I clicked it, it brought up a Firefox type of browser. Everything looked the same, nothing was off. And at that time, we used to have a Hungarian forum as a front page, as we didn't know much about Google. So, we would search stuff through that engine and it would work fine. So naturally, nothing seemed off to me. However, when I tried to search up animal videos, because I wanted to watch cute animals, I came across an English title, which at that time was gibberish to me, apart from this one word, gorilla, which is pretty much the same thing in Hungarian. So I clicked on it. And oh boy, I wish I never did that. The browser took me to a website which was completely black and had a red counter on the bottom left. It wasn't too long left, about 3 to 4 minutes. So I thought that I would wait, as maybe it's a buffering time, which was extremely believable because our internet was utter shit. And even now when I think about it, my heart rate increases and I just feel sick to my stomach. The counter stopped at 0 and the video began. I saw this girl, and to my best guess, she must have been around 17 to 23, just casually laying on a mattress on a floor. Then she sat up. It was kind of hard to tell much detail, as the room was mostly dark and there was only just a slight red light that barely made anything visible. The pixels didn't make it any easier to see neither. I felt as if it was streamed or filmed at 360p. It felt like she was waiting for someone to come in. She was completely naked, and it gave off the vibe that she was paid to do the deed, or at least that's how it came off. But suddenly, a chair door was pulled up on the left side of the screen, and I saw a gorilla walk out. At this time, my heart was beating so fast that I was surprised that I didn't pass out. All the alarms were going off, but me as a dumb-ass 8-year-old, I wanted to continue the video. The gorilla first seemed shocked. Then, it became extremely aggressive and it charged at the girl. It was clawing at her eyes and ripping her chest off, and I saw the blood drip everywhere. And the gorilla started eating the body, which was by now motionless. The shock wore off, and that's when I said, "Nope," and closed down the laptop very quickly. I sat in the corner and cried for a good half an hour, and I realized that I should have probably closed the tab so that I don't get told off. With my shaky hands, I opened the laptop, and I was met with a lost connection to the server error page. I could never erase this shit out of my head, and always dreamt about it at that time, as it gave me big-time trauma. But until this day, I'm scared to share this story with anyone, because I don't want them to think that I was a psycho and just made up this story because I want attention or something else. Please, if you ever saw this and got scarred for life, please, for the love of God, tell me that I wasn't the only one who saw this.
Hello everyone, it's your creepy sister here. Thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate each and every one of you. But I would also like to thank my amazing patrons, my top tippers, and my dearest channel members. Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it with all of my heart. If you want to support the channel further, you could also choose to become a patron, a tipper, or a channel member. But remember, it's appreciated, but never a requirement. I would also like to announce that we have merch now. The link is in the description of the video, along with all my other social media links, like my Discord server, Twitter, Instagram, and others. You can connect with me and send your stories there. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and comments are highly appreciated. And remember, your fear feeds me.